How you guys doing? Is this good? Oh, there it is. There it is. I'm going to open us up in prayer. All right. Hey, God, thank you so much for getting us all here today, and I just pray that you speak through me as we start a whole new series on just how to love community. And I just pray that the topics I go over are what you want them to hear, and that I'm not throwing anything in that I need to be saying with my own agenda. So I just thank you for this opportunity, and I pray that we can grow together and love you as one, and just work on our personal relationships with you. Thank you for this, and lift us all to you. In your name I pray, amen. So we are starting a new series called the One Another series. Whoa, what does that mean? I don't know. It means that we're going to try to establish a new community where we're being mature, authentic, and very redemptive with each other. Redemptive meaning having a lot of grace and peace and patience with each other. And furthermore, we're going to be using there's 59 verses that we found with one another in them, like love one another, bear burdens with one another, greet one another with a holy kiss, which is what I chose to talk about today. No, really. I feel like it's about time we kind of address this. So can you please turn to your neighbor? I'm totally kidding. That one is going to be done on Valentine's Day. Again, a joke. We're probably not going to hit that one. Let's bring it back serious. I'm sorry. But we really want to grow together in unity and just love each other and see what it looks like to be in community in a really true and authentic way. And to start that, we need to take a step back and look at what causes unhealthy community. And I think it really stems from how our relationship with God is or is not. And what that would mean is if you have a fractured relationship with God, you will have a fractured relationship with everyone else you meet because you are not fully satisfied in God. And then you are looking for outside sources to fill that gap, and you will never be satisfied, and you will always hold expectations over people, and they will never fulfill your expectations. And what that kind of leads into is where our identity is. And so what we're trying to do through this series is to figure out, are we truly putting our identity in God? Because there's times we're going to put our identity into something like a boyfriend or a girlfriend, our school, our major, our future, our career, and just who we are personally, and making that who we want to be. And when you put that burden on yourself, you will break, and you will not be satisfied. You will be very angry, and I know because that's happened to me multiple times. And what can happen is you should never put yourself in a position where your existence rides on something earthly. Because what happens is you will have that be the authority for your joy, that will be the authority for your despair, and that should never be true. That should never be your God, something here. And so we're going to look at what it is to see these aspects of community and ensuring that those aspects are true of our relationship with God first, and then letting that disperse through how we treat each other in community. Yeah? And furthermore, when we do have this identity in God, what's going to happen is you will feel happy. And it's not like this, oh man, that food was so good, I'm happy. Like, no, this will be an eternally satisfying feeling. And what will happen as a result of that, if this is a true heart change, it can't just be knowledge that you go, yes, I understand that as a Christian I must do this, or yes, this is something I have heard through church. I have put it and stored it in my brain. Like, it has to be your true actions lived out wholeheartedly. And when that happens, you are free. You experience a legitimate freedom to live for God, and God will work through you. And through that freedom, it will not matter what happens. What people think of you, what people say to you. For me, at the end of this talk, someone could come up to me and go, Brock, your talk sucked. I will never come back to this movement, and I don't believe in God anymore. And I have to be able to put my identity in God, go home and sleep at night knowing that I did what I needed to do. I put myself out there and leave it to God to do the rest. My identity isn't in my ability to speak and convert people. My ability is just in God. I'm a part of His family. I'm adopted into Christ. The gospel exists because God wanted me to be with Him. He died on the cross. His blood saved me. And His salvation for me is all that I need, and that's who I am, and nothing more. And whatever happens outside of that is not me. Like, that's not my identity in those abilities. And when you experience that truly, it's very freeing. It's very freeing. So we're going to look at means to do that together. And so I'm going to go into my first topic, which is bearing burdens with one another. The reason I chose it is because I suck at this. I am very terrible at doing this. So let's get going on why I'm bad. So first off, I'm going to hit up the scripture in Galatians 6, 1 through 3. And it says, brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. So let's break it down. I love to break it down. The first thing that you will need to know, it's a mess up here. This thing is not working out. When we're going to look at seeing brothers caught in a transgression, that can be very easily construed as you catch them. Ha ha! You sinned. I got you. And that's not what that means. We need to be able to take a step back and look at what it does mean to be caught. And like the Greek version of that word means to be ensnared, to be entangled, just to be in trouble, to be drowning, to be hurting. And when you see someone that you know and care about hurting, drowning, suffering, do you want to pounce on them and tell them that they are wrong and hold it over their head? That should not be something we do, especially in a community of believers where our goal is to point each other to God. The purpose of understanding, like seeing them caught in a transgression, is to have those who are spiritual restore them in a spirit of gentleness. And it doesn't mean those who are spiritual, varsity Christians. No. Those who are spiritual who have the Spirit, Christians, just us. Here, every one of you. If you are a believer, you are a spiritual person. And by restoring them gently, you are pointing them to God. You are going to figure out, like, let's say you see someone struggling with a problem, and you go up to them and you're like, hey, like, I noticed this is happening to you. And you gently just talk to them, and you point them to God, and you pray for them. That's going to mean a lot more than just being like, you're wrong, figure it out. The Bible's there, read it. It's like, ouch. Like, you just kind of leave them with a bitterness. When I was younger, a lot of you know me now as very mouthy. I say a lot of things that I probably shouldn't. I think a lot quicker than my mouth functions, so that's not good. It's just, uh-oh. And when I was younger, it was a lot worse. And there were points in time where older students would get very frustrated at me because I would have said something to hurt them. And their means of rebuke was just to come back at me really strong and tear me down. And I didn't learn anything through that. I felt really hurt. I didn't feel loved. And I knew that I was doing things that were not helpful. Like, I just wanted people to like me. I wanted to find friends. And everyone was just like, not everyone, just these few people were just tearing me down. They were the only ones who approached me at first, and it sucked. Like, I just felt like I would never find a means to fit in. And then I had a few buddies pull me aside and be like, hey, I know you don't want to be perceived as this. And I want to encourage you to seek God out and to see what he can do to change, like, through you. And so I brought it before God, and like through that there's been a lot of successes. Like, I've been really able to just check myself, and that's been an area that I've been able to grow in because they restored me. They brought me back to God and put me focused on him by praying over me. That's all it took. And to function through that, through transgressions, through problems, that's how we help each other as a community, to gently instruct with love and compassion. And that's how the community can start growing together. The next part, as you see, it's bearing one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. I'm not a vague person. I'm all about clarity. You need to understand me. Like, if someone doesn't understand me, I'm going to repeat myself like a broken record until you acknowledge the fact I have said something. It's just, I can't stand vagueness, except for here. I love it. It's beautiful. Bear one another's burdens. What does that mean? Like, what is a burden? The burdeny thing that burdens you, the burdened person who's got the burden burdening him down. What is the burden? I don't know what it means. I don't get it. What's a transgression? I don't get it. A burden is like everything. He's like all-encompassing, this burden. It could be something spiritual. It could be something physical, ailing you. It could just be a bad day, just someone's frustrated. It could be just the life of a single mother having to go day after day after day after day after day. Someone burdened. Their heart is heavy and they can't do it alone. That's what a burden is, just something weighing you down. And one of the things that can happen is we can think that it's not a big deal, so we just hold on to it, and we're not even going to give it to God, which is why we don't talk to anyone else about it, because it's not a big deal. You push it off. And then no one can help. No one can come alongside you and support you and encourage you. And you kind of get left in this place of despair and frustration. And one thing as people also, just keep in mind, when you bear a burden with someone, it's not always just going to be a quick fix. It's not like that one meeting like, hey, that sucks, right? Let me bear this with you. We're done now, right? Sometimes it can go on and on and on and on and on and on and just keep going. And you have to understand, like, that's where the patience and gentleness is going to have to come in, because you need to understand if you bear with someone, sometimes you got to be there for the long haul if you truly care and are compassionate for them. Because if we think about all the things that we give to God and He bears with us, that's a lot. Some things that I'm still working on, problems that I've been struggling with my whole life. And He's been there for me the entire time. And that's an example that we need to kind of step up and follow with each other, like, you know, close friends. And I'm not saying you got to be like, oh, here's my burden, boom, everyone, look at my problems. It's unrealistic. We're not going to be completely transparent with everyone. Guys got their issues, and they're going to stick to their close guy friends, and maybe let some other people in, but like they're not going to tell girls, because girls don't need to hear that stuff, and vice versa. But like allowing each other to have some form of transparency, where if prayer over that area is going to be very, you know, healing for the person. Like if everyone knew like they have a problem and they prayed for it, and you know, like illnesses or just financial struggles and stuff. Like, although embarrassing, it's good to have prayer. It's good to have the community supporting you. So one thing we can do is be willing to jump at the opportunity to help people bear these burdens. Like, look for people who might be hurting and be willing to come alongside them. And check your heart, too. Because if you're just doing it because you want to be a fixer or a helper and you feel so good for helping and fixing people, or you want to be the guy to call someone out on a problem because you have this superiority or propriety about it, don't do it. You need to check your heart and see where your heart is in this before you approach those people. Make sure God is going to be speaking through you. Use the Spirit. And it can be scary to put yourself in a position that's uncomfortable. But that's why we have the Spirit to help guide us through those times, to help give us the words. And sometimes just a prayer is what they need. And then this last part, for if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. That's like a lot of people. Thinking that we are just something so special, when in reality we are not. And that is, from a spiritual perspective, it's like if you think that your ministry is successful because you're doing something right, wrong. God is doing something right through you. If you are having all these successes, God has given you those abilities. And for you to take so much pride in who you are through that, you're wrong. God gave you that. God granted you those successes. And so it's really hard to find that line, where am I really giving this to God, and am I letting Him work through these things? Am I identifying myself as successful because of what I'm doing, or am I really letting God have the credit through this? And even through that, bearing burdens with one another, you might go, my burden is so much worse than theirs, so I'm not even going to deal with them. I have so many more problems than that person has. They should shut up. I have this entitlement. If we did that, none of us would talk to each other. None of us would bear burdens with each other, because we all have problems. We're all broken. We all have something going on. And that's the reason for our community, is to allow the community to support us. That's what God uses a lot of time, to support us when we're hurting, when we're broken, when we have this burden to bear. And so for you to think that you are something when you are not, when God has not made you that, you're just deceiving yourself. You're falling into sin and pride. And that's when you can fall. And I'm going to talk about how I do all these things consistently. It's going to be great. I'm really excited. Not really, no. So this last year, I spent a year in the Middle East on a stint. And one of the things that I got to do through that was share the gospel in a country full of Muslim people. And it was awesome. And I got asked to lead the team. And I was like, all right, this is going to be a big step. And one of the problems that happened to me prior to going is I tore my knee. And it just, it wasn't good. It hurt. But I'd be like, no, I'm good. Yeah, I'm fine. It's like, obviously I'm limping. Obviously there's a problem. But I just could not appear weak. My biggest area of pride in my life is I cannot let people see I'm physically hurt, that I have something wrong. Like, I struggle with this, or yeah, this is a problem, or, this is my family life. Like, that's okay with me because it's something that's just an external circumstance that is just carrying me with it. But this is like my body. My body is failing me. I am weak. I am pathetic. I cannot let people see that. And I don't want people to worry about it, so I just brush it off. So the first 2 months, public transportation and walking everywhere, my knee was inflamed consistently. And it just sucked, and it hurt. And my team would ask me, hey, are you all right? Because I told them what was up. And I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm good. It hurts. Yeah, blah, blah. Just brushed it off. And I did not give them the opportunity to come alongside me and support me, which is what the community is for. And I took it, and I wasn't giving it to God, and I just kept holding on to it like, I'm fine, I'm strong, I can get through this. And it was just self-righteous. It was ridiculous. To a point where there was the worst winter that this country has experienced in 30 years. It was a Soviet winter, like 3 months straight of snow and ice. And my knee ached every day. And I just kept going, nope, I'm good. Nope, it's nothing, just got to warm it up. Like, wrong. It was so wrong. And one day we were walking to pick up dinner, my co-leader and I, for our team. And I slipped on the ice, smashed my knee into a curb, and rolled down an embankment. And there were some guys watching me, and I'm like, oh, no. And in that country, if a woman helps you, you're pathetic. Like, you do not get helped by a woman. And so I pushed her away. And I was like, no, don't help me. I got this. Don't let them see this. And I hurt her. Like, I really hurt her because I did that. And I hurt my team because I wouldn't let them in. Like, I was not being open with them. I was not being vulnerable. And, like, I'm literally, like, walking back to my apartment, physically incapable, going, I got this. And she's, like, trying to help me. And I'm like, no. It was just stupid. And what am I thinking? Like, I'm just like, I have to be strong for my team. I have to be there for my team. I got to be this rock. And it's so wrong. Like, I wasn't supposed to be that rock for them. God is supposed to be that rock. Like, I was just putting so much false strength in myself. And then, like, a couple months later, I literally got hit by a car. I got run over. And I'm laying there in the street. My knee is just, like, jacked up. My back hurts. My side hurts. I got scrapes and bruises. And I just get up and I'm like, I'm fine. Like, what an idiot. Like, what is going on with my brain? And then I go, and the guy's like, oh, and I just start yelling at him, walk back to work, and I go back to my job. And everyone's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I just got hit by a car. Something's wrong with me. But, yeah, and I just, I let them pray for me after I got hit, and just, oh, I'm fine. I was not. I'm still not fine. Like, I'm like permanently jacked up because of it, because of my own pride. And as a result of that, I got hurt while I was out there. Like I told you last time I talked, my grandmother died while I was out on stant, and, like, I love that woman. Like, out of all my relatives, number one. She's so great. Sends me, like, cards on, like, Valentine's Day and Easter with, like, $5 in it. You're my Valentine. She's adorable. $10 on Easter because it was special. But she was great. She was so funny. She knew my, like, desires, my passions, my loves. She cared about it. And before I left, she kind of jested, like, hey, don't get hurt out there, kiddo. And I was like, all right, Grandma, whatever. And she's like, I might not be here when you get back. Just as, like, she always jokes like this. She's like guilt tripper. I'm like, okay, guilt tripper. Left her, and she did. And that sucked because that was, like, my last interaction was just this, like, banter. And when I was there, my dad called me, and he's like, you can't talk to her. Like, you can't say goodbye. I was like, ugh. Because just the room she was in, like, there's no technology available, and so I just kind of, I broke down. I was like, man, like, I won't be able to say anything, like, no last words, no nothing. I won't be there for the funeral. I can't support my family. Like, I was just broken. So I felt really bad. I cried, brushed it off, threw on a hood. It was cold, so, like, no one could see my face. I'm sitting in the living room like, oh. And my team's there, and then a couple of them need to get walked home, so I walked home with them. And they noticed, like, something was wrong. They're like, are you all right? And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not. And I just felt like I really needed to be honest with them. And so I told them just kind of like my fears, like, I'm not going to be able to say goodbye to her. Like, I just feel so, like, I'm halfway across the world. I can't do anything. I can't get home. I can't be there. And we got in an elevator, got to the top, and by the time we reached the top floor, the doors open. They did not know how to respond to me because I had not been open before. And they just left. The doors closed, and I was like, I just felt so rejected. Like, left alone and raw and broken, and, like, to open yourself up and to just be shut down, it just sucks so badly. And I just remember feeling like, oh, Like, what do I do? Like, that was what I was supposed to do. And I just got kicked to the curb. I talked with them afterwards, and like, it was just, they had no idea how to respond to me at that time, just because I had never been like that with them before. Which is, in all fairness, I kind of did that to myself. And what they did is not right either. And we talked about it. We worked through it. Forgiveness is there. I still love them. But it just, that time sucked. It was just really miserable. And through that, I just learned, like, if anything, like, learn that a response to something like that, just pray. A simple point to God, like, let me bear this with you. I don't know what to do, but just go to God I'll go to God with you and bring this before him. And at the same time, like, don't feel like you have to, like, be strong through something. It's okay to show weakness through that. And an even worse version of this is now, Thanksgiving. I fainted after Thanksgiving. I got a concussion. A couple days later, I fainted again. A day after that, I fainted again. The next week, I fainted 10 more times. And I did not know it was wrong. I was like, oh, I'm having a health problem again. And the problem with this one is I had no choice in my vulnerability on this. Like, I had to be weak and pathetic in front of multiple people, because I'd just be with friends, and then I was down. And they had to see me weak, and I just could not handle that. And I am so thankful that God did that to me, like, to have to be vulnerable, because the response I've been given from this community has been beautiful. Like, they have been there for me. They've encouraged me. They've uplifted me. This whole break, I just had to, they suspended my license. Like, I'm medically incapable to drive now. And so I just sat during break in my house, freaking out, because the doctor's like, it could be your brain, it could be your heart. Let me tell you, like, when people tell you that, you're never okay. But I was so fortunate to have, like, Tristan gave up his break to spend time with me as I'm, like, processing, sitting there, like, am I going to make it through this? Like, is this something that's going to kill me? Like, is my brain going to give out? Is my heart going to stop? And you don't know. It's still hard. And going to the doctors, they kind of resulted it is I have a heart condition, and it's something I have to stick with. And it can happen, like, anytime, and sorry. And it just sucks to know, like, this is going to be a part of me for a while, and it may happen sometime soon. It may never happen again, but I just don't know. And to have so many people here supporting me and encouraging me and praying for me, praying with me to God, and just taking the burden with me is, like, so comforting. And I'm experiencing a lot of joy, even though now I'm, like, super shaky and freaking out. It's just so nice to have people bear it with me. And that's the point of community. Like, that's why we do what we do. That's why we support each other. That's why we love each other and have compassion for each other. Because as strong and as goofy as I act, like, normally outside of meetings, like, I'm hurting, like, there's something wrong, and you don't know, because sometimes people aren't always going to be sharing that. And so to always be willing to look for where people might be hurting. And I want to challenge us as a community to start doing that. Like, are you able to be someone who looks out into a community and sees someone hurting? And do you have the courage to walk up to that person and ask them what's wrong? If you see a girl hurting, guys, you can ask them. It's not taboo. Vice versa, girls. Sometimes it's what it needs. I can't tell you how many times Carrie's prayed over me. How many times, like, people have come up alongside me that are not a dude and have prayed over me, because at that time I'm weak, and that's who's there. And they're supporting me, and it's awesome, and I love it. And the other part of it is, are we willing to bear that burden with someone else? Like, are we willing to open ourselves up to let people come alongside us? And are we giving that to God first so that we can give it to the community? And so that's kind of what I wanted to take with this bearing of burdens together. If you have more questions, feel free to come up and ask me afterwards. I definitely would love to continue to talk about this, but I'm going to close this in prayer for right now. God, thank you so much for community. Thank you so much for bringing believers together that are focused on you, that have this like-minded spirit to just grow to know you. And I just pray that we can start practicing this art of bearing burdens with one another, that we can support each other, love each other, have compassion, and gently just instruct each other in ways to grow together. And I just thank you for the opportunity that I've had to grow in this area, that I continue to grow, that I don't revert back to my old self and just stubbornly think I'm strong when it's not true. I'm deceiving myself through that, Lord. I just pray that we can learn to love each other more and learn to love you more and just bring our relationship with you and let that impact how we treat community. So I lift this all up to you. In your name I pray, amen.
It's just such a cool idea that being vulnerable with other people can actually bring you closer to them, like friends and family. And just the idea of that is just so interesting.
Yeah, and it's also important because with our upcoming winter outreach, we need to learn to be vulnerable with each other before we go out and be vulnerable with others on campus. So that was a really great message. And thank you, Brock.
Thank you all for coming. Don't forget Ursa Minor next week, and we'll see you then.
Yeah. Oh, do we know where we're going? Do you know where we're going for lunch? 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 Do you know where we're going for lunch?